This lecture is lecture number 3, part B. The part A I uploaded already, and this is the last one in lecture number 3. That means lecture in third week. That means April 3rd. This lecture is for that. Okay, before starting today's lecture, I want to introduce briefly about the online quiz test. About the practice first and the main quiz test later. April 3rd, we'll take online quiz test. That is mainly for practice, to be familiar with the online quiz test. You to your smartphone or you to your PC, it doesn't matter. You can try 5 trials, and that means 5 attempts. That is possible. And among those trials, the last attempt, that point will be applied. Just be careful about that. Always try to do your best at the last trial, and that point will be applied. And I will add this point to the final grading. And that practice test can be started for the class number 1, April 3rd, 10:30 a.m. After that, for probably 2 weeks, you can try 5 times, mainly for practice, to prepare this main quiz test. For class number 2, from our lecture, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that practice quiz test will be possible. Thus, you can try 5 attempts. You can try. And this is the April 17th. That is first week. We'll get the main quiz test. 20 questions, and you should solve those questions in 10 minutes. In this case, 10 minutes, but there are 10 questions. But here, I compressed a little bit because we are using single room, and you are adjacent to each other. There's the question that will be shortened. The time to solve that question will be shortened. You should solve in 10 minutes, and you should solve 20 questions. And finally, that 20 points, that is the full points for that, that will be added to the final points for your grading. Class number 1, in your lecture hour, that means 10:30 a.m. April 17th, and class number 2, April 17th, 3 p.m., 3 o'clock. Okay, that's it about the quiz test. And our online lecture is extended. There's 2 more online lectures provided, and this is the 3rd week lecture. Thus, that is named lecture number 3, and this is especially 2nd lecture. Thus, that is part B. And we'll complete this one, HTML forms, in w3schools.com. That domain name is our lecture website. After that, in the first week, that is called lecture number 4 and part A. Probably that one lecture will be enough to complete this HTML media section. And this schedule is following our syllabus, and I will introduce later you to the website contents. Okay, this is the very first in this lecture number 3 introductory section. Thus I will finish this introductory session, and let's move to the w3schools.com website. There's something to correct. I mentioned this date, April 17th, that is 4th, but actually that is 5th week, and that is first offline lecture in the our lecture room, that is P03 lecture room. There's I am correcting this one. That is 5th week instead of 4th week. Okay, let's start this HTML form section. This is the lecture number 3 in the 3rd week, and actual date is April 3rd. Okay, these 5 chapters are belonging to this HTML form section. Let's look at this one first, and let's try to enlarge a little bit. Then this one is showing this large screen, and the responsibly, this is called responsive web design. You cannot see the menu chapters here. HTML forms. Probably you might have been using this one many times, because when you are logging in any special website, you are writing ID name and the password. That is related to this HTML form chapter, and this is HTML form element or form tag. You can try here with this real source code. Here, HTML body section here, we are using this form tag. And in this form tag, we are using this attribute action. And also some related elements are here, label, and some input tag to get some input. And we'll look at the result here. Let's look at this one. This HTML forms, that is this one. We are using heading tag. And form tag, to this one, we can show this one until here, until submit. First name here, and yeah, this one is the first name, and that is mainly for this label, and thus we are using this label tag. And the input tag, we are using this one to put in some input value here. There's input entry here. This is related to this input tag. And the value, that attribute is containing some initial value. Initially that was John. And you can try other name if we want. Then you can see after running this one, that is initial value. After that, another label here, last name, and also another input tag here. Initially, you can show some value here. Also, you can use any other character, for example, Korean character, just simply this Korean consonant, gyuk, here, then you can see. There's any other language you can try to put in here. And you can submit. This submit button is made by this type. Input tag. This one is using many attributes, and among them, type is one of them. If we are providing some value, submit, for that attribute, then we can show this submit button. Here, this submit, after we are clicking that submit button, then that input values will be sent to the server. But here we are not dealing with the server. Simply this one is showing which variable and which variable value, that pair, variable value, those are sent to the server, and this one is showing only that. That's it. The server has processed your input and returned this answer. And in this tutorial, also in this lecture, we are not dealing with that server-side script. There are several server scripts. One of them is PHP. And this w3schools.com tutorial, this website is explaining very well PHP and also JSP and ASP. Among them, JSP is most popular, and also PHP. Also ASP is being used usually for the window, because that ASP is made by the Microsoft. Okay, let's move to the next. The form element, in other word, form tag. This form element defines a form that is used to collect user input. And this form element is containing many form-related elements. And we look at those elements. An HTML form contains form elements. And these form elements are different types of input elements, like text fields, checkbox, radio buttons, submit buttons, and more we'll learn later. Among them, we'll learn this one first, the input element. This input element is the most important form element. Every day, probably, we are using this input tag if we are using any website. The type is like this. There are many types, and among them, text type, and another one, radio type, another one, submit type. We looked at this one already, but we'll look at again. Here, input and attribute type, if this one is containing text, and that means that is text type input. Here. Then simply we can input text. And due to this one, we can show the input entry like this. And this square box for writing input. that will be automatically shown into this input tag. Here, this form itself is not visible, and also default width of an input field is 20 characters. Here, default number of characters is 20 characters. And the label element, this label, the name is self-explaining, and that is mainly for labeling. And for this label, and as we observed already, and this one is showing some label. And the radio button, another type, radio type. Then we can provide some radio button, and with this one we can select only one exclusively. Let's look at this one first. And label, so simple, so I'll skip this one, and let's focus on that. We are learning radio type. Then the result will be like this. This one is for that. First one. And here, value male is here. Label male here. And the second one, female, and input radio button is here. We can select exclusively. Thus only one can be selected with this radio button. That is the main characteristic of this radio button, radio type. If we are supposed to choose only one, then we should use this radio button. We cannot either male or female at the same time. That is not possible, right? Thus, exclusively, we should select one of them. Then we should use this radio. And one thing to mention that is important here, this name. Here, the name here, the name value. This gender, they should be same. That is very important. To be unique, to be exclusive selection. There's gender instead of that one. If I am using other name value, let's look at what's going on. Then here I can choose here. Then in the previous example we couldn't choose other because we should select exclusively. But here we can select twice. That is not exclusive at all because of the different name here. Because of that error, we could select both. But if we are using unique name here for each input and for this radio type input, then exclusively we can select one in one. That is very important. Okay, let's move to the next. Submit button. There are many types, among them submit button. With this one we can submit to the server. If we are providing some input with this input element, then that input value should be transmitted to the server. Then how? In this way, we can send, we can transfer to the server. And in the server side, that program that is running in the server side, that will be activated, and this program will take this name and value pair which we input. Okay, let's try. But here only we can see the result, how that is being sent to the server, and which value pairs, name and value pairs are sent. Only that value pair, name value pair, we can see here. That's it, because we are not dealing to the server side. This is mainly related to the client side application. Okay, here let's try to submit. Then you can see this one will be sent to the server, and HTTP protocol will send to the server from my computer or my client or your smartphone. If you are using your smartphone, then smartphone will send this one using HTTP protocol, and server will receive this one, and depending upon that, the server script program that will take care of this. If that server side program is saving this one in the database, then it can save in the database. That's depending upon that application. Okay, here another important attribute, action, in this form element. This one is the program file name running in the server, and that will be activated, and I am sending my name and value pair after submission to the submit button, and that the name and the value pairs, those are sent to this server, and this server program will take care of that. And here another attribute, target attribute, related to this form element. After the submission, the result will be shown in which window, and with this value, target value, we can show. Okay, let's try this one first. Okay, after submission, the others are saying, now we are learning about this target attribute. What's going on if we are using this underbar blank? Then you can see new web page, new window is shown here, and because we used blank. Instead of this blank, later we'll look at another one in advance. Let's look at self plain text. Then you can see there like that. But if you are writing some password, then it is not so good in terms of security, and we have a lot of experience to write some password. Then we can see some asterisk. Then let's look at this one in advance. We'll anyhow submit like this. Then you can see that is showing the default value. If we are not specifying any value here, then that is showing some default value. Something wrong here. Spelling is wrong. Value. Submit. Then you can see this one is changed because of that real value here. If I am selecting this fiat and submit, then you can see the result. Cars equal fiat. This is a variable value. This is variable name, and this is the value for that. Cars, that is a variable name that is described here. This name attribute is containing that variable name here. There's selected fiat, value fiat. Even though this one is mainly to show. Okay, let's look at it again. Fiat. Okay, let's try to put in some any arbitrary character, then we can differentiate in easy way. like this. This one is to show this one, but I am selecting this one, then real value is only this one, fiat. Okay, let's try to show some. Okay, this one. Then real value, if I am selecting this one, then real value, that will be, okay, that will be sent. Okay, that purpose selected. Let's try to select this one. Then you can see this one is real value sent to the server. Thus, this is the variable name, and the value equal this one. If that is selected, then that will be sent like this. Okay, let's try to close some open tabs. Okay, let's move to the next. Okay, this one is, initially we can use the selected one in default way. If you are not select, okay, if you are showing some mostly frequently used car name here, then that can be selected like this. Then in default way, that is being shown first like that. If you are moving, okay, if I am removing this one selected, then the first one will be shown here as we observed already. And if you are here, and if we are trying to put in this selected here, then in default way, this audio will be shown first, like this. Okay, also we can control the number of visible values. Initially, here we could see just one value, but if we are using the size attribute and the value, then depending upon the number, we can see many values initially. Let's change this one to 1, then only 1. Let's try to show 4 values, then we can see like that. So to this one we can control. For mobile phone application, the size is so limited comparing to these PC windows. Thus we can use this one to control, to minimize the size. That will be depending upon the available space in the screen. Allow multiple selections. Sometimes instead of selecting only one, we can select many cars together. Default, only one can be selected, but if we are providing this attribute here, multiple attribute here, then we can select many as we want, like this. But here we should press the control button in your keyboard. If you are not pressing that control button, only one can be selected. But please try to press the left bottom corner. You can see the control button. Please press that. When you are pressing that, and you can click this one, then you can select many as you want. Text area. This is also very important element. Input element, input type element. Text area. here we can control the input text area, the rows and the columns. Let's look at this real example like this. These rows, 10 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. And 30 columns, that means here in horizontally we can provide 30 characters maximum. We can increase about 20 rows instead of 10, twice we can increase. Columns about 60, thus we increase it twice for each case. Then you can see. And also that whole input values, those are character string. And that character string will be assigned to this variable name, message. Thus, when we are sending to the server, then message, that is a variable name for that input value, and the input value is the character string. When we are sending, let's look at, that is the variable here, and this is the value for that character string, and that will be sent to the server. Okay, you can try. Also, you can control the size with this style. That's the CSS style. You can control. If possible, try to use CSS to change the size of the text area, but the rows and the columns will be more convenient. I am using that to show the mobile portal screen size to put in some input character string. Okay, the button element. Later I will show you some real example using the name portal wopen.com, which I built. And the button element, to this one we can show some button like this. This one, click me here, and you can change that any arbitrary character. Then you can see that is the label for that button. The type value here, that is button. Then if I am clicking this one, then one-click event, that is one-click event handler program that is being executed. That is JavaScript function, alert function. We learn later. We are learning here button type, and we can show you this one, this button. That's it. You don't need to worry about that JavaScript statement. And the field set and the legend element. This field set element is used to group related data in a form, and the legend element defines the caption for the field set element. Here you can see this legend and the label input. We use this one already, and let's look at and let's focus on that new element, legend, and the field set. And to this real example here, if I am removing this one, legend is okay. Let's look at this one first. Legend personal, yeah, here. This one is legend value here, and this line, border line, to show this field set. And if we are removing this one, in the previous form example we didn't use this one, and simply we can show this one. In terms of design, if we are using this field set, it will be much better. Okay, data list element. This data list element here, still this one is related to that form related element. And to this data list element, this element specifies a list of predefined options for an input element here. And users will see a drop-down list of the predefined options as they input data. And we will look at that real example. And here, the list attribute, here, list attribute of their input element must refer to the ID attribute, here, ID attribute value, browser. That should be same, like this. Okay, let's look at the real example to this source code. Okay, here, input, simply, as we learned already, we can show this one, input box. And this one is a new one because of this data list, and this data list is showing these predefined options. Drop down options here, drop down list, and this data list. Here, if I am selecting Chrome among that many optional browsers, this Chrome will be selected. And if I am submitting, then we should focus on that variable and the value pair, because that is very important. Because we are selecting one of them and we are sending to the server. And the server should take care of that input submitted variable and value pair. Here, Chrome, and that is sent to the server. And let's look at this one. The variable name, that is browser, and the selected value, that is Chrome. And that variable and the value pair is sent to the server. The output element. This element represents the result of a calculation, and probably that is newly introduced in HTML5. Output element. Here, simple calculation and simple operation. This is, you don't need to worry about this one. Probably after learning JavaScript, we learn later, and in advance that is being introduced here, because pass integer, and this function is JavaScript function. This one is changing that value to the integer value. Sometimes if that is numeric character, then that should be converted to the real number. In that case, we can do this arithmetic operation, because the characters cannot be added. Usually that characters can be concatenated, but numerically that cannot be added. Thus we should use this kind of method to convert. And yeah, here we are looking at this one, output, and the name X for A and B, ID A and B, and output is here. And this one is newly introduced one, and there's trying to look at only output element that is being newly introduced here. If we are using this one, we can control that output. Let's look at this. Okay, this one, if we are selecting this value, And you can see that value is selected and added here. And if you are using your smartphone, you can see a little bit different result on the screen, smartphone screen. And if you are using Explorer browser, then the result may not be shown because of that the supportability of that browser of the that is supportability of that HTML5. Thus, depending upon that supportability, you can see different result. Some browser may not show this kind of result. Okay, also you can select, use this increase or decrease button. Well, here you can select also. The output element is not supported in Edge prior version 13. Thus, depending upon the browser and depending upon the version of that specific browser, the supportability will be different. This one is shown, this one, range. This is a range called range. Input type is range type. And the name, variable name, and the selected value will be assigned to that variable here. A.value that is assigned here and converted to a numeric number. And another value here that is converted to this integer number, and they will be added together and they will be shown here. Output X, output X, that is here. Okay, probably this is the good point to wrap up, to take break point here. Okay, you can try other exercise by yourself. This is the summary for that. Okay, let's move to the next chapter.